Welcome to another edition of Resource PNG. Talisman Energy is working in partnership with other developers in developing the Stanley Gas Project in Western Province. This project looks to contribute significantly to the economy of Western Province as well as the overall economy of the country. We speak with Christie, Vice President, Operations for Talisman Australasia.
Hello everyone and welcome to Resource PNG. Today we have Managing Director for Talisman Australasia, Mr. Christie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now you spoke at the 13th PNG Mining Conference. What were some of the key messages you'd like to share?
So some of the key messages from us were that Talisman is continuing an exploration and development program and we're committed to bringing on projects like Stanley for early commercialization and cash flow. We're also looking at bringing on additional resource projects in the area, but underpinning that we see a large aggregation opportunity of the gas resources. Critical is we actually see enough resources being held by 3 different consortiums at the moment, and there's opportunities for us to share, to collaborate more broadly and potentially accelerate the development of LNG projects in Papua New Guinea.
Now can you give us an update on the Western Province Gas Project?
Certainly. So the Stanley Gas Project, we've recently taken over operatorship March in 2014. We've been conducting a significant review of the concept and the costs in preparation for going into construction. And we're about to bring that analysis to a conclusion with our joint venture parties. The likely outcome from that work is we probably need to do a little bit more work before we're able to get underway on that project to just confirm the base and the scope.
So how many gas aggregate areas does the license cover on the Western Province project?
So for us, we have 12 different licenses and we operate 9 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it extends pretty much over the entire Western Province area. Probably the most prospective area is the Upper Fold Belt, just before we go up into the highlands. And it's an area attracting a lot of attention. It's on trend with Pinyang, Hides and Juha. And we're very excited about our drilling program and seismic program in that area in 2015, 2016.
Mm-hmm. And who are the major operators? How much interest does each hold?
So we are the largest equity owner in the major licenses through the Western Province. We have somewhere between 30 and 50%, and we operate the majority of those licenses, 9 out of the 12.
How are you finding it with the Western Province people?
The Western Province people have been incredibly open. I think between Talisman's values and the Western Province, it's an extremely good fit with us, our approach being very open, honest, and showing a lot of respect as our basis for doing any business in that area.
Can you share some of the challenges or positives?
So the challenges, the easy and obvious challenge in the Western Province is just the lack of infrastructure, and therefore the logistics and the challenges that are associated with that. The opportunities have been to work with the local landowners and the local people to develop local agriculture, local support projects, where the locals can build their own little businesses, build their own capacity for future support of operations.
You're finding it very successful?
We've been very pleased with our performance in the Western Province. We have a very good working relationship with the landowners, and in fact I'd say that's probably one of our strengths.
Mr. Christie, can you confirm if the gas potential is sufficient for the 2 megaton train?
We believe there's gas capacity in the Western Province for well beyond a 3 to 4 megaton per day train of LNG. We believe there's significantly more potential there, which will require more exploration work to realise. We also see in the Western Province there's a minimum size of LNG train that will make economic sense, just because of the sheer remoteness and the river system and getting LNG out of the Western Province. So we see probably a minimum size of 3 megatons, but we see the potential for much more gas in that area.
Once the fields are producing, how will the gas be monetized?
So there's two parts to that. Obviously there's a wider aggregation and selling gas into LNG, but I think for Papua New Guinea the far more interesting piece here is the domestic gas sales. So we have a domestic gas sales obligation for the Stanley field of 15%, which will be selling that gas with the conclusion of a commercial agreement with Octedi, which will allow lower operating costs for Octedi and assist with the mine life extension.
So for our viewers, can you just explain what is a domestic gas sale?
So a domestic gas sale is where we'll sell the gas to a power generator and they'll burn that gas to produce electricity, and then the electricity gets used for commercial or domestic purposes.
Now, Mr. Christie, reports state that the LNG facility will be built near the port of Daru. Why Daru?
So just backing up a little bit, we've conducted detailed analysis throughout the Gulf from Port Moresby round to Daru and potential sites. We've narrowed it down to 3 potential sites: Port Moresby, Cape Possession and Daru. So at this point we still see those as the 3 potential sites. The more interesting conversation is the fastest site to develop, the soonest project that we could bring on would be to take the gas to Port Moresby, but it's the most expensive option. And the lowest cost option would be to go to Daru, but it would take the longest of the 3 options to develop.
Welcome back to Resource PNG. We continue our conversation with Grant Christie, Vice President Operations for Talisman Australasia, on the company's efforts in developing the Stanley gas field.
Do you see this near location to the Pandora gas fields as a potential aggregation point?
We see it as an option. It's obviously gas in the area and we're the operator of that license.
Mr. Christie, when does this project commence commercialization of gas reserves?
So at the moment, unlike the PNG LNG project, which is in production, I'd say the Elk Antelope project is in project kickoff, having completed the exploration. The Western Province is one step behind that, which is we're still completing the exploration program, which we've got programmed for 2015, 2016. And at the conclusion of that, we'll be in a good position to be able to start putting out the project plans, notwithstanding any potential earlier collaboration.
Can you give us a lifespan?
So a lifespan of an LNG project is typically 20 to 30 years. So these are long-scale assets that provide long-term employment and opportunities.
Can you tell us how much does the government expect to earn from this?
The government will have the opportunity to back in for its 20.5% plus the 2% for the landowner rights. So the government is a critical stakeholder and a partner. We see them as a hand-in-hand partner for our current operations and for future development projects.
Now, Mr. Christie, in terms of land ownership, has there been any clan vetting or feasibility studies?
So for the Stanley project, there's been extensive vetting of clans and working with the landowner companies to understand and help set up an umbrella company. That project is in a development phase. The earlier projects, which are still in the gas aggregation and earlier stage options, we've done mapping, social mapping, to understand the clans that are in the relevant areas. But we won't take that next step of doing the formal vetting until we've got to a full project phase.
What are some of the challenges of land ownership in your perspective?
I think one of the biggest challenges and opportunities is to help realize the opportunity and manage the expectations. The project, any LNG project, is a small piece of the overall life cycle of the project. So the LNG project itself will only go for in the order of 5, maybe 6 years. The LNG project proper, once it starts operating, will go for the next 30 years. So I think there's a lot of emphasis and focus put on the project phase, and I think the opportunity is to actually start building up service capability and manage some of the expectations around, given the capabilities where we can have local participation, fully encourage it, but start to build up capacity so that it's not just the project phase you're involved in, but it's the whole life cycle. So it's the subsequent service support, it's the maintenance work, it's the waste management streams, it's everything for the next 30 years. And I actually think that's probably the biggest opportunity.
Now you mentioned umbrella companies. What are some spin-off benefits for the landowners?
So the spin-off benefits are obviously there's obviously jobs, and not only just jobs, but there'll be upscaling of jobs and therefore education. And so I see it as an opportunity to really provide the infrastructure and the impetus in the region to give a lot of people opportunities that otherwise just don't currently exist.
Mr. Christie, can you give us a healthy forecast of the Stanley Gas Project in Talisman, Australasia?
So Talisman Australasia, we're excited and committed about delivering the obligations that we've got in Papua New Guinea. We see it as a very prospective area, and there's a lot of synergies with our other operations overseas, so we can bring in a lot of international experience and capability. The Stanley Gas Project, we're very committed to bringing that project on stream. I think the original plan that was put in place, where the production was supposed to be delivered in 2012, has obviously been missed. And we're working to bring the Stanley project on as soon as possible.
The 13th PNG Mining Conference, what do you hope we can take away from this?
I think a couple of things for me. One is continued investor confidence. I think Prime Minister Peter O'Neill did a fantastic speech around just quelling some of the concerns and questions, more questions that people were having. So I think he had some great messages. His messages around infrastructure and building capability, I think, is also in keeping with helping support growing an economy. I think some of the other big messages for us is that we have an opportunity with the resources in Papua New Guinea. So we've delivered one project, but the opportunity is actually to deliver a succession of projects and to get more collaboration going across the industry. So we learn the lessons from Australia, where having major consortiums compete against each other has resulted in overspending. I think the opportunity for PNG is you've delivered one fantastic project. Stanley is the next project coming along. We have Elk Antelope, and then we have the gas in the Western Province as a potential third project, and to get across that spectrum more collaboration to help accelerate that development and make sure that the development is capital efficient and in the best interests of the joint ventures and the nation.
Thank you, Mr. Christie, for your time here in Resource PNG.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Resource PNG. Horizon Oil is also a partner in the development of Stanley Gas Field. In this segment, we speak with Kelvin Bramley, Chief Company Representative for Horizon Oil in PNG.
Good evening and welcome to Resource PNG. On the show tonight, we have the Chief Company Representative from Horizon Oil in PNG, Kelvin Bramley. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
What do you aim to get from the Sydney Conference on Mining and Petroleum?
Look, it's just about letting everybody know what you're doing, and it's more than anything a good chance to see all the main players in the industry in the one place, and meet and greet and talk business, and also listen to everybody else and hear what their plans are and what they're hoping to achieve in the next 12 to 18 months or so.
Okay. In your speech this morning, you highlighted some of your ventures. Can you give us a few brief details on that speech?
Sure. I spoke mainly about the PRL21 or the Elevala Ketu project, which is in the Western Province.
And how is that going, by the way?
It's going very well. We're well into the development planning process. We've submitted our regulatory approval applications. We've completed our EIS and our social mapping and it's going through that regulatory approval process now, it's largely on track, and we're hoping to get, we're hoping to receive, formal regulatory approval.
So how is that going so far?
Ilavalakatu is going very well. We've gotten a long way down the track with the development and planning process. We've submitted our development licence and pipeline licence applications to the state. We've submitted our EIS to the state, we're currently going through that regulatory approval process now. That approval process is largely on schedule, and we're hoping to receive regulatory approval in the first half of next year. So it's going well.
The local participation, is it good? Is the community behind this project?
Yeah, look, they are. I mean, we've got a pretty good relationship with the local community. It's an area that hasn't seen a lot of impact from development. It's not all that far from Octedi, but it falls outside the CMCA zone. So, they are looking very much forward to something happening in their backyard.
Okay.
And so there's quite a bit of anticipation around, and excitement, I guess, that something's finally happening for them.
On that same note, does your company have any community or local engagement or empowerment programs that you might venture into?
Look, we're in the development planning stage at the moment, so it's really about community awareness and baseline study, so getting a sort of in-depth understanding of where we are and who we're dealing with.
Okay.
We've got a very good team of community affairs officers in Kiunga, they do a great job of keeping that relationship with the community going. Very conscious of our obligations there, and very conscious of trying to bring local landowners along through the process. So we're trying to be very transparent. We've started publishing a fairly short sort of newsletter on a monthly basis to keep the word trickling out, so that people are aware of what's going on. And even sometimes there's not much happening, but that in itself is news as well. So we're just trying to get the message out there.
With regard to this project, what are some of the main objectives that you hope to attain from it? And also, how long do you think this project will go on for?
Well, look, I mean, as far as our objectives, Horizon Oil's objectives, I mean, we want to monetise the assets there. So that's the nature of the business. We're an E&P company, and ultimately you're there to produce hydrocarbons and make money out of them. Related to that, though, there's a whole host of benefits, and they tend to go to the local community, and some of them are quite direct in terms of royalties and other benefits, which are essentially cash benefits, but a lot of indirect benefits as well. And projects like ours bring with it the opportunity to enhance and develop infrastructure. That creates opportunities in itself. Better social mobility, labour mobility, business opportunities, and if you create those opportunities, people will grab them. And so there's some of the sorts of things that from our perspective, yes, okay, that's great, but from a social perspective for the people of the Western Province generally, there's some nice add-ons to the project, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. And in saying that, what are some of the main challenges that you face?
Look, there's a whole host of them. With any kind of development like this, there are any number of course, risks associated with it, subsurface risk, for example, but certainly in terms of the practical execution side of things, I mean, it's a little logistically challenging in that area. It's about 50 or 60 kilometres east of Kiunga, as in a straight line, but there isn't much there in terms of infrastructure, roads or wharves. We've also in an area quite near the Illawarra East Darwin resettlement area, which there's still a population of about 2,000 West Papuan refugees in that resettlement area. And these sorts of things bring challenges, and it's up to us to ensure we've got the right strategies in place to deal with it.
And in saying that, describing the challenges that you face, how do you plan on alleviating the effects from them?
Well, look, I mean, we as we go through this process, one of the first things we'll do is get a very clear picture of what the baseline is, and I'm talking in particular about some of our social risks or opportunities. Get a very clear picture of who we're dealing with, what we're dealing with, and then off the back of that, and this goes to compliance with environmental permits, we will develop a whole suite of environmental and social management plans that will provide us with the framework to manage some of those risk areas.
Government negotiations and arrangements and the administrative process behind that, how is that going for Horizon Oil?
Look, I think it's going quite well. We're dealing with government departments that have got some challenges in terms of resourcing and staffing, but the teams, and in particular for us, it's the Department of Petroleum and Energy and the Department of Environment and Conservation. So far both of those departments are rising to the challenge and doing a pretty good job, to be honest. I think I said at the outset that we're pretty much on schedule with our regulatory approval process, and I don't really see that sort of changing at this point anyway.
Okay.
So.
Now, Mr. Bramley, your primary focus at the moment is on condensate recovery development. Can you elaborate further on that in terms of your plans?
Sure. Condensate recovery is sort of the first phase of the development that we're pursuing in our gas condensate fields. Why? Because it gives us the opportunity to commercialise those assets earlier, because there isn't the volume of gas there at the moment to do something with on a small scale or mid scale LNG type basis. Okay. The gas where we are is very what we call liquids rich, so it's got a lot of condensate in it, and it's good quality condensate. So, we're not going to have too much trouble disposing of that on the market. The next phase is probably the most critical, and that's the gas commercialisation side of things. That's a far bigger challenge. And it's going to take a lot more work. We're looking at several options, one of which is sales to sort of regional industrial consumers within the Western Province, and there's a couple of, well, certainly one large mine and some further mines in the pipeline that will, pardon the pun, but that will mean there's a domestic market there for some of our gas.
Okay.
Other options include mid-scale LNG projects whereby the gas is taken down to a coastal location. Our view is probably around Daru is the most likely, and processed in the Western Province and shipped to market from there.
Okay.
And the third option that can never be sort of discounted is taking the gas from our licence areas in the Western Province into a sort of existing or planned larger sort of LNG project. So we're working quietly away on those various options, and but really, I mean, for us, that's the big prize. Condensate gets us some way there, helps fund the gas project development in the future. But really, it's all about what we can do with the gas.
Okay.
And so we're pursuing that. We'll pursue it quite aggressively, to be honest, because it's fundamental to our business.
Okay.
And timescale wise, it's you're certainly looking in the sort of 5 to 7 years of in the future. It's quite a way away. So.
Just one more question before we wrap things up. Do you see this project as a prospective third LNG project?
Yeah, look, I think there's certainly. I mean, I'm not a geologist or a technical guy, but there's certainly the prospectivity there in the Western Province to potentially support a third LNG project. The challenge for people like us is to make sure that third LNG project is economically viable, or presents the best opportunity to the developers and to the state. The state, let's not forget, makes money out of these things as well. So, so look, there'll be a lot of, it's not a new idea, it's been around for a long time, and there's a lot of other developers out there with the same conceptual plans. So, you know, but I certainly think the Western Province has got the prospectivity and the resources, you know, to probably pull that off. So it's going to be interesting to see how it develops.
So if it is confirmed as economically and financially viable, would Horizon Oil take advantage of that?
Look, we would. I mean, I was describing earlier, I mean, what we're there for is that gas. We've got to get that out of the ground and sell it. So, yeah, we'd certainly be more than happy to be involved in any kind of third LNG project that was centred on the Western Province, for sure.
Okay. And on that note, thank you so much, Mr. Bramley, for your time
problem.
on Resource PNG.
Pleasure. Cheers.
Okay.
And that brings us to the end of this episode of Resource PNG. If you want to know more about how you can contribute to this program, please email us on resourcepng@mtv.com.pg or log on to www.mtv.com.pg, where you will find a link to the Resource PNG page. Until the next time, I'm Erbatullo, wishing you pleasant viewing.